Give us free. Give us free.
Your Honor, please instruct the defendant that he cannot disrupt these proceedings with such outbursts.
Give us free. Give us free.
If we are to have any semblance of order in this country,
Give us
peace, unity, and welcome my conscious and unconscious family and friends. This is the all-new BlackVillage Community Podcast, and I am truly your host of the show, JC, aka Afro Black, dropping nothing but the raw and uncut, without any fear, as I use my mic as a spear to chucker you with liberated truth. I am your host and your native soldier in the struggle. My purpose and mission for this show is first to enlighten, inform, and engage. And I want to engage with all who claim to know the truth. All truth seekers and my native family, I welcome you. This show is dedicated to all our indigenous native ancestors and to all those who've carried the mantle of truth, and to every person with the ability to throw off the chains of comfortable habit and unwarranted assumption and move in a new, liberated direction that is guided by truth and observational evidence, no matter where that direction may lead you. My main objective and purpose here is freedom, mind, soul, and spirit. That being said, welcome to the BlackVillage Community Podcast, and much love from our great universal goddess and mother of all, living here and above.
DC in the house.
What do you mean by America's my mama?
I don't know nothing else. I don't know nothing else. I wasn't eating chitlins when I was in Africa. I wasn't eating watermelon when I was in Africa. Huh? I wasn't wearing zoot suits when I was in Africa. I wasn't getting my hair cut when I was in Africa. This bitch is my mama. This bitch is my mama. Bitch is my mama. And yours too. Except I know it's mine. It's mine. It's mine.
Food. ASC got produce. ASC about to go cool. We gon' food. ASC got produce. ASC about to go cool. Whipping in the kitchen. Whipping in the kitchen. I be whipping in the kitchen. Whipping in the kitchen. Chop it up. Chop it up. The slow food got you sloppy, bruh. So chop it up. Food. Chop it up. The slow food got you sloppy, bruh. So chop it up. See, in my hood, they ain't really much to eat. Popeyes on the corner, McDonald's right across the street. All this talk about guns and the drugs, pretty serious. But look at what they feeding y'all. That's what's really killing us. Please change. The food in my school, make it good. Get that fake food up out of my hood. Hope the message not misunderstood. Grow and cook your own food, yes you could. Got the little homies in the garden. Got the big homies selling collard greens in the north side. Ain't starving since community cooks been on the scene.
Screaming hot Cheetos and Takis, boy, you better eat your broccoli. Fake food is kinda lame, putting poison in your brain. Need more people at the club, popping bottles of that water, dabbing on that fast food. Pulling veggies out the garden. I go hard, I eat good, and I put that on my mama. Eating healthy school lunch, and that's where the Miss Obama. Drinking water, living longer, no processed drama. Call me John Deere, shawty, I be growing like a farmer. Dad.
Hey, I am here. This is JC, aka Afro Black, and I am here with you for another Indigenous Sunday to do nothing but drop nothing but the raw and uncut to my conscious and those who are seeking consciousness community. You feel me? Basically, I'm reaching out to those who don't know. Specifically, those who are considered and called Black Americans, aka also African Americans, you feel me? And this is JC, aka Afro Black, and I'm here with you for another delicious Indigenous Sunday to share nothing but the raw and uncut. And I enjoyed my time last week sharing the information that I shared, and I'm going to continue this podcast topic, which is titled This Delicious Indigenous Sunday, which is August 25th, you feel me, 2018. Today's podcast topic is, and I quote, why we eat the way we do. Again, why do we eat the way we do? Excuse me, not why do we, but why we eat the way we do. Subtitled, The Plantation Poisoning of a People. My people. What do I mean by the plantation poisoning of a people? Our urban neighborhoods are nothing but plantations. Just because you're not living on a reservation don't mean that you're not on a reservation, my people. You feel me? And then you got those who are moving out of the urban aka reservations, moving out of the ghettos, but still persist with the plantation mentality and mindset, which is exactly what the white devil wants us to be and wants us to do. You feel me? So on that note, let me scale things down and play something a little bit more to vibrate to. You feel me? Something like, there we go, Tupac in the backdrop. You feel me? So I'm going to continue this subject matter with my indigenous community, educating the community on why we need to change the way we live, change the way we think, and change the way we eat. You feel me? Tupac, that was a quote by Tupac a long time ago. He said, we need to change the way we think, change the way we eat, and change the way we live. No matter where you put it at, that's the way it pans out to be, my people. And the thing about it, did we get this way on our own? You leave it up to a lot of these educated house Negroes. We got this way on our own. If you leave it up to these educated porch monkey house Negroes who consider themselves educated because they got a PhD or a MD or a BA or a master's degree and whatever, the thing about it is that they're reading the information in reverse. Yeah, people, you heard me. These educated Negroes are reading the information in reverse, along with the fact that they have embraced and accepted the narrative that we've been taught that we are African, when the majority of us are not African at all. And even those who claim that they got African ancestry, if you know that you got a great-great-grandfather who came from Timbuktu, and you can prove that, and you know that this grandfather is in your family tree, the question is, who did that grandfather made himself to? Did he made himself to an African woman, which would mean that you got two African grandparents, mother and a grandfather. But in most cases, people, if there is an African ancestor in your family tree, most likely there's either one or two, and most likely that grandfather wedded himself to an indigenous mother, an indigenous grandmother. Meaning your grandmother was indigenous and is indigenous, making you still indigenous, people. To America. Matrilineally, matriarchy, as far as matrifocal and matrilocal wise, it still makes you on a cultural level, as well as on an ethnic level, as well as on a biological level, still makes you through your mother, because you are who your mother is. So on that note, I got some tracks I want to play, some audio casts I want to play that's going to speak to the fact of why we need to change the way we eat, because most people got their eating customs and their eating habits from their mother, and predominantly from the women in their family, meaning the women were cooking this way. Even if you want to say, well, my dad was a good cook, but who taught your dad? In my family, I'm considered the master cook in my family. I cook better than my wife. But I got my skills from my mama. I'm gonna be honest. I didn't get my skills from my daddy. I got my cooking skills from my mother. And 9 times out of 10, 90% of the time, that's just the way things pan out. The reason why is because we are who our mother is. Not only because we come through her womb and through her matrix, but we are who she is because also our attributes, our first comprehension and interaction and socially when it comes to love and socializing and interacting on a respectful and love and comprehending level comes from our mother. So on that note, I got some things I want to read. I got something last week I was talking about this subject matter as a continuation, and I was pointing out some of the small things we can do to make changes when it comes to changing our lifestyle from this Eurocentric way of eating. You know, one of the Eurocentric ways that a lot of things that a lot of people get introduced to, especially children, is the Eurocentric tradition of drinking milk. And like I said, when it comes to poisoning us, when I talk about us being on the urban concrete reservation of a jungle, you know, I grew up in the projects. I grew up in the Jordan Down projects, Los Angeles, South Central LA, and when you talk about that, the school system is a part of poisoning our people, poisoning our children with the cow's milk, with the pork, with the high salt content that they use to preserve things and other preservatives that they have in these foods that are chemically man-made processed foods. So that it's starting even in the school systems as well as in the communities when so-called black people don't have access to healthy foods because the vegetables are too expensive. So you know what happens? Black people buy the convenient vegetables. What are the convenient vegetables? Frozen vegetables, canned vegetables, especially canned vegetables. You know, I grew up, my mother used to buy a lot of canned vegetables. You know, canned corn, cream corn. Ugh, cream corn. I love corn, but I don't like cream corn. I don't like cream corn. I'm pretty sure I don't like cream corn for the very reason that my mother constantly bought cream corn, people. And so on that note, we have to learn to change the way we eat. And the only way we're going to change the way we eat is that we first have to realize we have to change our mind. Last week I talked about the 3 mechanisms of control that these white devils used to enslave our people. But first, the control mechanism, which is still on our people to this day. Drinking milk is a part of that control mechanism. They fed milk to the slave on the plantation. If you was a slave and that plantation was a farming or milking plantation or a beef plantation, what did you think that master had more than enough of? Milk. And I got some information showing that. I got a slave narrative of a slave who lived on a plantation, which was a cow, where they processed cows, and he talks about the milk that their master was constantly giving them as kids and continued to give the children. I'll read that a little bit. But as I was saying, the control mechanism, people, we got to realize the control mechanism. So the first thing he did was control our people through laws, control our people's eating, control where our people went, what they could and could not read, what they could and could not say, the control mechanism over indigenous people. The third thing they did was to take over our land and resources. Even though these things went in, these processes and these devices, these mechanisms, these laws, these rules, these ways of oppression happened simultaneously at the same time. These are still things that they did, these 3 main things. The third thing they did was paper genocide. Once they created the form of government that they created, they started creating more laws, more manipulative laws, amending them to their so-called Constitution. And remember, people, the Constitution is nothing but a copy of the indigenous law of peace. White folks are not original. White people are not, they have nothing original. They have nothing authentic. White people are not authentic. Nothing they've done, nothing they do, nothing they can do, and nothing they have done has been original or authentic. And most people don't even know that the Constitution, if you don't believe me, I will encourage anybody to go look up the Great Law of Peace, written by our indigenous people. And you will see that the Constitution is a mirror copy. And if you go look up the information on how the Constitution was written, you can find that they went to our people and got a copy of our people's Great Law of Peace, because there was peace before the white man got here. Most people think that Indians were killing one another before Europeans came. That's a lie. That's another lie, people. Let me change up something right quick here. There they go, right there. So, people, we got to start researching for ourselves. We got to stop letting these white devils lie to us and keeping us mentally enslaved when we don't do our own research. So that was the three things that I talked about last week, the three control mechanisms. Today, I want to talk about another three key essential things that we need to consider when it comes to making changes in our lives from eating the way we do. The first thing we must change is we have to change the way we think. We have to change our mindset, the way we think about food, the way we think about life, the way we view things. Because we don't realize that we're thinking like white people. We're still enslaved mentally to this system. That's why we don't grow our own food. That's the reason why women won't take the lead and educate themselves so they can educate their children. They're too busy trying to survive. Another mechanism by this system. Another slave mechanism. So we have to change the way we think, our mindset, which is very important, and not on a personal level, but detrimental to the purpose of our indigenous unification. First, we also must renew we must renew ourselves out of the old Eurocentric way of thinking. Okay? And this would include, but not limited to, our religious perspective as well. You might say, what does religion got to do? Oh, Christianity has everything to do. A lot of religions have everything to do with the fact that not being and not living and not changing your life to a better perspective, especially being indigenous and Aboriginal. Because as an indigenous Aborigine, see, Christianity even teaches you can eat what you want to eat. Christianity teaches you can eat whatever you want to eat. As long as you're blessed by God's name, you can eat it. See, indigenous people did not eat things that they shouldn't eat because it was detrimental to their health. And indigenous people knew that. And I'm going to show that to you as well as I continue on. So the second thing we need to do, other than changing the way our thinking, are the way we view food, the way we view one another, the way we think about our environment. We need to change. Other than changing the way we think, we got to change the way we eat. I want to, and that's the main purpose of this subject matter, is changing the way we eat. Also, we got to change our lifestyle, and all of this entails our lifestyle. When I say changing our lifestyle, I'm talking about the way we interact with one another. A lot of black folks, a lot of so-called black people don't even realize that the way we behave was cultivated by the system, regardless if it was the ghettos, regardless if you're living in the Hamptons. Doesn't matter if you're living in white folksville or if you're living in the most poorest parts of the ghetto. You're living in conditions that was created by the system. And if you don't want to believe that, all you have to do is look at the United States from just stand back and look at this country from the perspective that the white man, what he does in his community and what his community look like. Go into an all-white community and you will see they have in their community what they want in their community. If they don't want a store too close, a liquor store too close to their schools, they make sure that liquor store is not nowhere near any communities of white happiness. They make sure there's not too many churches all over their community. Huh? My point being is this. The conditions that our people are living in, the conditions that our people are living under, even when it comes to our lifestyle, was created and was induced, crafted, manipulated, constructed by the system. And the system was constructed by the elite, white folks, a.k.a. white folks. Doesn't matter how many house niggas they got up under them. It's still superseded by white folks, the white devil. So those are three key things we need to we need to pay attention to, people. We need to focus on these things and make changes in our community and in our lives. And these things affect our children and make things better for our children. And this is why, and when I talk about our mindset, that definitely, positively, absolutely entails the number one thing, our children realizing that they are not African American, that they are indigenous to America, that they are indigenous Aborigines, that we are American Aborigines. We are not no African Americans. We're not no Africans. I was sharing with my children a couple days ago. I say, just imagine if you went to Africa for a vacation. And while you're in Africa on a vacation, you see a group of young African men, and you hear this one young African man says, "I'm not African." And then you walk over and say, "Excuse me, what did you just say?" "I'm not African." You say, "Wait a minute, you look like an African, you black as night. What do you mean you're not an African? You sound like an African, you got an African accent. That don't mean anything. Just because I live in Africa, just because I look like an African, just because I sound like an African, don't mean I'm African." Do you know that looks ridiculous and sounds stupid and ridiculous? And you know what? But you're not going to find that. If he looks like an African, sounds like an African, and he's living in Africa, the nigga's an African. But look what we do over here. Because the white devil has convinced us that America is such a melting pot that the so-called AKA black Negro, AKA black American, AKA, who might have some Indian in him is really African. He's been mixed with everything. So, he doesn't know who he is. And as a result, we treat each other as such. We discount what our grandparents told us, or we don't ask our grandparents a damn thing. We don't talk to our aunts. We have a seriously communication gap when it comes between the elders and the young people today. So people, we got to stop believing the narrative that's been told to us, which is completely a lie. You feel me? So on that note, also what I want to get into when it comes to why we eat the way we do, I got an article that I want to read. That's called, the title of this article is called Decolonizing the Diet. It's titled Decolonizing the Diet. Now, this is a Native American article it's written by Mrs. Gideon Mailer from the University of Minnesota. And the book was this book was written in 2015, 4/20/2015. Again, it's titled Decolonizing the Diet. Now, what I want to point out in this book, which is important, is to show how we're not built like white people. We're not constructed like white people because we're not white. We are indigenous. We're not African. We are indigenous. Indigenous, what do I mean by indigenous? Indigenous to America. We are indigenous to America. This book that I'm going to read, a piece that I'm going to read from this book, which is titled The American Food Pyramid, and it talks about how the food pyramid was constructed purposely, not to help the people, but to harm the people. So let me read this. And it goes like this. The title of this article is Decolonizing the Diet. Decolonizing the Diet by Gideon Mailer from the University of Minnesota. Okay? And it goes like this. The 18 Morrill Land Grant Act defined the American Public Research University ongoing mission to promote the liberal and practical education of the industrial classes in several pursuits and professions in life. From the 1950s, scientists used the land grant, mind you, the 1862 Morrill Land Grant. Pay attention to that. That's something important. And that's something also totally separate, because I went and looked that up. The land, this goes into when they were taking over and colonizing and taking land. Once they took that land, then they were looking for reasons, political reasons, to take portions of land for scientific research and study. Okay, so that's what the 1862 Morrill Land Grant Act is all about. So I would encourage anybody to go check that out. Again, let me start it over from the very beginning of the paragraph, because I know it kind of reads a little scanty from the very beginning. The 1862 Morrill Land Grant Act defines the American Public Research University's ongoing mission to promote the liberal and practical education of the industrial classes in the several pursuits and professions in life. From 1950, scientists used the land grant system to ally their scientific and nutritional research with new policies that came to be promoted by the federal government. Within the University of Minnesota system, for example, Ansel Keys, a person by the name of Ansel Keys, famously sought a new research agenda in order to question the health benefits of fats from animals, fish, and dairy. Contrary to those who highlighted the problematic medical implications of foods that were readily converted into glucose, as well as the potential inflammatory effects of polyunsaturated fats, Keys, the man named Ansel Keys, and others used their land grant mandate to promote research that supported the government of the day in its stated desire to increase agricultural output in soy, wheat, corn, and seed oils. Scholars, scientists, public policy analysts, and journalists have begun to suggest that the resulting federal government food pyramid has worsened certain aspects of American public health, particularly through the associated growth of metabolic disorders such as diabetes, and even the prevalence of certain forms of heart disease through the exact effect of the diet heart hypothesis on public health are still currently being debated by scientists. But basically, did you hear what he just said? This man put the whole point he pursued the land grant thing so he can open up and start a research facility study, which he did in 1860. And he did this. Okay, this man named Ansel Keys. No, excuse me, he did this in the 1950s. But he pursued the 1862 land grant, and the whole purpose that he was doing is to align himself with the government. Look, let me read it again. It says Keys and others used their land grant mandate to promote research that supported the government of the day in its state desire to increase agricultural output in soy, wheat, and seeds and oils. Scholars, and then it says, look, he did this on purpose. Now, he knew that his mandate and his purpose was doing this. It was for the purpose of making money for the government. He aligned himself with the government, got the government to back him up. If you go research this a little bit more. So my point being is that we cannot trust the system. That's the whole point of me reading this, is that we cannot trust the system. Okay. Also, I want to read this right here as well. Okay, people, as I stated before, we must let go milk. I want to say this again. We must let go milk, as it is not meant for us to drink. Milk was meant, and I'm pretty sure everybody know, milk was meant for cows. People, not people, but it was meant for cows, for baby cows, calves. You know, and if you think about it, you're drinking something that comes out of a cow's udder. You're drinking cow tit milk. Most people don't even realize what they do. They're drinking cow tit milk. You know, come on now. I'd rather have my mama's milk. I'd rather have a woman's milk than to have drinking some cow tit milk. Something that's meant for a calf, for a cow. So we got to change that. You feel me, people? We cannot trust the government. The whole milk industry, the beef industry, that's all government, corporate endorsed. That's all about money. Ain't a damn thing funny. It ain't about your health. It's not up, you know. I even got some information right here talking about how milk is not, it doesn't even help your bones. Milk don't benefit your bones. That's another myth. That's another lie. I got information I want to read on that. But before I read any more information, let me play a little bit of something, you know, I was talking about last week. Our people did not eat a whole lot of meat. When I talk about our people, I'm talking about Aboriginal woodland Indians. Aboriginal woodland Indians did not eat a lot of meat. As a matter of fact, they were masters at the craft of agriculture and holoculture, meaning when it comes to growing vegetation. And they had mastered it. You feel me? So let me play this right quick, and we shall return.
All right. So let's talk about soul food, and notice that's a question. Question mark. Because studies show that the diets of African Americans are comparable to standard Western diets in composition in terms of the amount of protein that African Americans eat, the amount of fat, and so on and so forth. But because of something called thrifty gene complexes, Western-style diets have been shown to cause higher levels of disease in African Americans and other racial and ethnic minorities. And what you see over here is a graph of what's called glucose intolerance, or what can be considered pre-diabetes, versus people living in West Africa. And the West Africans are in yellow, and people living in the United States and Britain eating a typical Western-style diet in green. And West African diets are traditionally plant-based diets. They're low in fat. They contain very little meat and no dairy. You can see that people eating a West African-style diet have a very low incidence of both pre-diabetes and actual diabetes, whereas those eating the Western-style, typical American, British-style diet, it's off the charts. The diet makes a huge difference. So-called soul food is peculiar to the African American community. Soul food typically includes things like chitlins, oxtails, neck bones, pig's feet, and other high-fat, high-salt, and sugar-laden, unhealthy foods. There's a recent study called the REGARDS study, which stands for Reasons for Geographic and Racial Differences in Stroke. This study was huge. It looked at over 30,000 participants, both black and white Americans aged 45 years and older. And what it showed was that most of the increased stroke risk seen in African Americans can be explained by differences in diet. The study showed that the so-called, what they call the Southern diet, and that's a diet that features heavy consumption of fried foods, organ meats, processed meats, full-fat milk, and sugar-sweetened drinks, while downplaying and fruits, salads, and whole grains, increased stroke risk by 63%. Calling it the Southern diet is just a polite, politically correct term for soul food, okay? And if I were to ask you guys, what is the leading cause of disability in African American males between the ages of 25 and 50, how many of you would say gunshots? How many would say motor vehicle accidents? Do you know the leading cause of disability in young African American males is stroke from untreated hypertension? That's crazy. That's absolutely crazy. And again, like I tell my patients, this study also showed that the plant-based diet, which included cruciferous vegetables, green leafy and other vegetables, fruits, beans, and whole grains, reduced stroke risk by 20%. So I want you guys to understand that what we call soul food is not soul food, it is actually plantation food. I want you guys to understand that what we call soul food is not soul food, it is actually plantation food. Now, yes, they showed ingenuity and resolve and did their best to transform this refuse that they were made to eat into something that was acceptable. Unfortunately, after we were freed, we claimed what is essentially a dietary vestige of slavery and christened it soul food. These foods are not soul food, they are health-destroying plantation food, and we need to let it go. Because they are not, because they are not, because they are not, because they are not, because they are not our true heritage.
There you go, people. You heard it. He said because it is not our true heritage. And the brother was on button for a lot of things that he was saying. Okay? But where he fell short at was calling us Africans. This is where he falls short. This is where the game and the delusion continues, people. These people don't give a damn about how we eat. The reason why is because they know they damaged our mindset, our habits, our customs, and our traditions from the very core, going all the way back to colonization. That's why they don't care today. They don't care how many Negroes work out. They don't care how many so-called Negroes eat healthy today, because they know that the majority of us have bad habits. They know the majority of us are ignorant of our bad habits. These white devils know this, and they're coon porch monkeys. Let me not say coon. I got to break myself from saying the word coon, because there was an indigenous tribe here in the Americas that was called the Coon tribe. So I got to break myself from that. So yeah, and anybody else who using that, if you didn't know that, go look it up, research it. There was an indigenous tribe here in America called the Coon tribe, just like there was a Fox tribe. You feel me? Just like there were also many other tribes that had names that you might not even be familiar with. Like there was a tribe here called the Bloods. There was a tribe here called the Bloods. Look it up, my people. Called the Bloods. They were a Blackfoot Confederacy tribe as well, meaning they were a part of the Blackfoot people. They were part of the Blackfoot Confederation, meaning they came out of the Blackfoot tribe. They called themselves the Bloods. So what I'm saying again, people, we got to learn to change the way we eat and change the way we drink. Change the way we eat. Yeah, and we got to change what we drink too. Changing the way we eat would include anything that we consume as well as drink. We got to drink more water, more purified, clean water. We got to stop drinking so many sodas. Stop drinking sodas altogether. I don't drink sodas. Stop drinking that white man sugar. That's all it is. All it is just refined liquefied sugar and chemicals. We got to stop drinking sodas. Stop eating the white man's food. And see, now this man going to try to say that, they were eating. The only thing, look what he said, though, when he talked about what was bad on the plantation. He mentioned the meats. He didn't say nothing about the indigenous slaves' vegetation that they grew. He said that what we've gotten, we call it soul food, but it's plantation food. What made it plantation food? Well, I'm going to tell you what made it plantation food. It was the additives that the white devil gave our ancestors that they added to there, which was poisonous meats. The leftovers from the pig, the leftovers from the cow. That's what made it plantation food. Other than that, there was nothing wrong with collard greens. There's still nothing wrong. I still eat collard greens. I made me some matter of fact, just last night, I made myself some cabbage and some vegetarian Italian sausage in my cabbage. And, I did it just the way my mama did it. The only difference is there was no pork in it. Still tasted delicious, still tasted like soul food without the pork. You feel me? What made it soul food is because it came from our people's soul. They did the best. They did not only the best, they did the greatest with what they had because they made that mess taste good. What made it mess was the pork. Pig feet, hog maws, pig ears, pig head, pig pork chops, pork steak, pig rib, all that stuff is crap. The pig is a recycler. And it's a European animal that came from Europe. The pig is not native to America. People, look it up. I talked about that last week. Hernando de Soto in 1539 brought the first 13 pigs here. The first person to bring pigs to America was Hernando de Soto, and he opened up his ship and let 13 pigs come out and just let them free and let them roam the American landscape. And several years later, it turned out it was hundreds of thousands pigs. The cow as well. The cow was brought here. Cow is not native to America, people. Again, I'm going to say it again. The cow, the dairy cow, the cow period is not native to America. Go look it up. Go research it. It came from Europe. It was brought here. And especially the cow that we see today. The cow that we see today is a genetic modification of mixing the bison and the cow together. Again, the cow that we have today on the farm, the dairy farm, to the beef cow that's being sold as meat, that cow is a mixture of bison and European dairy cow mixed genetically together. And that's what you got. Go look it up. People don't even know people are eating beef and they're eating a genetic European modification. It's not even an original animal. It's a mixture of two animals, the buffalo, which is the bison, and the European dairy cow. And that's what people are eating. They're not eating a natural animal. They're not eating an animal that was naturally made and naturally created by nature. The beef industry is feeding the populace genetic modified food and genetically modified animals. Bottom line. Same thing with the pig. Raw and uncut, just like that. You feel me? And so we got to change the way we eat, people. We got to stop feeding our children and giving our children the same bad habits that we were given when now, today, we really have a better choice today when all you have to do is research and study. And so let me open it up. If anybody got anything they want to say, any questions they might want to ask. I see that there's a few people here in the chat room. I appreciate all joining me today. Here, this is the Black Village. Anybody might want to say anything, go ahead. This is JC, aka Afro Black, your host here of the Black Village. If y'all see you sitting there, if anybody sitting there, if they got anything they want to add, anything they might want to say so far about what I said. Okay. It's all gravy and potatoes. Okay. But as I was stating, we can start by changing our diet by starting with stop giving our kids milk and stop buying milk, stop purchasing milk. Let me read this. I got something I want to read right here, pointing out that indigenous people did not drink milk. Okay, and I read this last week. I'm going to read it again. Okay, I'm reading from a book that was written by a woman named Susan Steppens. Her name is Dr. Susan Steppens. She's a professor at the University of New York. Okay, and this is an excerpt from her book, and it goes like this: under food preparation. Okay, under Native American food preparation, it is important to keep in mind that many Native Americans were largely hunter-gatherers until Europeans arrived. Although many Native American tribes had well-developed agriculture, they did not have domesticated animals. Not true, they did. Okay, and they still depended heavily on the wild plants and animals for food. Also, James Adair, this is an explorer by the name of James Adair, mentioned that Indians did not use any kind of milk. Again, Indians did not use any kind of milk. He also stated that none of the Indians, however, eat any kind of raw salads. They reckon such food is only for brutes. Berries and fruits were eaten raw, but most other foods were cooked. James Adair was impressed with the culinary skill of the Native American women and said, it is surprising to see the great variety of dishes they can make out of the fish, corn, beans, peas, potatoes, pumpkins, dried fruits, herbs, and roots. They can diversify their courses as much as the English or perhaps the French cooks. And either of the ways they dress their food is so gracefully and so great. It says it's so grateful to a wholesome stomach, meaning they cooked hella good. They didn't use milk. Our indigenous people did not drink and did not use milk for cooking or anything like that. That is a European introduction into our diet and also I'm going to read another article right here showing on the plantation, starting on the plantation, they were giving our people milk. They knew that indigenous people didn't drink milk. Now, look, you heard that brother just mention on that that I just played you a minute ago on the diet and how it's affecting the health of so-called black communities with diabetes and other things. But did you also hear he talked about Africans did not drink milk? He said Africans didn't even drink milk. Now, if Africans don't drink milk, meaning indigenous people don't drink milk. And see, Africans are indigenous to Africa. You feel me? But indigenous Native Americans, and I say indigenous, I don't even like that term Native Americans because anybody born in America is native to America. But according to the Webster Dictionary of the 1828 dictionary, the original Native American, which is the original indigenous Aboriginal copper-colored people of America, they didn't drink milk. And if you go to other islands, like the islands, like I'm talking about islands like the Polynesian Islands or the New Guinea Islands, or even in Australia, the Aborigines of Australia, indigenous people don't use and drink milk. If they drink milk, you know what kind of milk it is? It's coconut milk. Milk that comes from Mother Nature, people. You feel me? And that's what we need to embrace. If anybody's not going to say anything, I'm going to turn people's mics off because I don't want to hear any backdrop. I'll turn it back on in a little bit. So if anybody got anything to say, I'm going to continue my podcast subject matter, people. All righty, now let me scroll down. I want to share this information. I guess I'm going to read this a narrative from a plantation showing they fed milk. Now, this is an excerpt that I took from a slave narrative book, but it had nothing but stories of actual first account stories that came from the slaves once they were freed from the plantation. And so this is one that talks about milk. how the master made milk so openly ready for them on this plantation. It goes like this, okay? And I quote, now this person is speaking in the way it's written is spoken the way they spoke back then. So forgive me if I sound a little funny as I'm reading this. It says, Mars Alec had plenty of his slaves to eat. Excuse me. Mars, he had plenty for his slaves to eat. There was meat, bread, collard greens, snap beans, taters, peas, all sorts of dried fruit. I learned to love milk so good. They say the same Uncle Jim what made our beds, made our wooden bowls, what we drank. He kept filled with bread and milk for the chilling all day. You might want to call that place where Mars Alec had our vegetables raised in the garden, but it looks more like a field to me. Now, that was just a little extra that I read from a slave narrative. He's talking about how the master kept milk and bread for the kids to eat all day. Milk and bread, okay? All righty. Now, here's another article. I got an article right here that I want to read called The Reason Not to Stop Drinking Milk. I mean, basically, don't drink milk. Don't continue to drink milk. Just continue to stop drinking milk. And this is from an article. Let me read this article right here. You can find this article right here, okay? This article is from Fitness Reloaded. Don't stop drinking milk because your body was not meant for it. That's what the article says. Now, the article says the reason not to stop drinking milk. In this article, I want to discuss the benefits of milk. I won't discuss. That's how your article goes. It says, I won't discuss the benefits of milk or its effects on the bone's densities, osteoporosis, hip fractures. I'm not going to give any dietary advice or talk about milk's nutritional value. Instead, I'm going to focus on debunking this particular thing on milk. Adults are not designed to drink milk. Cow's milk was designed for cows, not humans. Other mammals stop drinking milk past infancy. Lactose intolerance is proof we are not designed to drink milk as we grow up. Paleolithic people didn't drink milk past infancy. Hence, our bodies is not designed for it. No other species feeds off of other species' milk. Let's examine those that do. Okay, cow's milk is designed for cows. Okay, now here I'm going to the second part of the article. Recently, a friend of mine told me he decided to stop drinking milk. His rationale was that cow's milk is meant for calves, not humans. So it's only logical that cow's milk is not good for adult humans. Note that he did not talk about scientific studies or milk's nutritional value. Instead, he based his decision on a plausible argument. It does sound like it makes sense, right? Cow milk is meant for cows, so why are we even drinking it? Here's the logical leap. Just because cow's milk was designed for calves does not mean that it's bad for us or that we shouldn't drink it. Cow's milk can be good for use and good for cows too, just like goat's milk can be good for us and good for baby goats as well. The fact that goat's milk is really good for baby goats doesn't mean that it must be bad for us. Now, this is what this fool is saying. In some cases, it does turn out that milk of one of the species is not ideal for another. For example, cow's milk could give a lactose overload to kittens. But that doesn't mean we can't jump to conclusions without having investigated the scientific part of it first. Okay, I don't even like the way this thing reads. This guy's talking about giving milk to animals, to other animals, like cats and dogs, got to do with the fact that it's not good for human consumption. With the fact that it's not good for human consumption is the fact that scientifically it also attacks our free radicals within our bodies. The enzymes and the bacteria in milk attacks our free radicals within our body. Now, I got an article right here that talks about how milk can also give you cancer. I would encourage anybody to go research. It's a whole lot of information out there. Go research the negative effects of milk on the body. There's a lot of information out there. So let me continue on with some more information I got here that I want to talk about when it comes to our Aboriginal indigenous ancestors. Okay? And when it comes to the way we eat. Because when you talk about the way we eat, you're talking about anything that you put in your mouth goes into your mouth, past your palate, and into your stomach. And that would include milk, water, any other liquid forms, vegetation, meat, or anything like that. And so this is the reason why we got to change the way we even think about eating and think about food. Now, let me prove a point that we eat the way Europeans do. This is an article titled "The Colonization, Food, and the Practice of Eating." Again, this is by this article that I'm going to read right now, which is talking about the Spanish who colonized here first in the 1500s. It's by an organization called Food Empowerment Project. Okay, and this is titled "Colonization, Food, and the Practice of Eating." So this excerpt I'm going to read right now is talking about the Spanish. It's all right. Here we go, and I quote: "In the minds of Europeans, food not only functioned to maintain the bodily superiority of Spaniards, it also played a role in the formation of social identity. For example, in Spain, elites generally consumed bread, meat, and wine. The poor in Spain, however, could not afford such luxuries and instead ate such things as barley, oats, rye, vegetable stew. Even vegetables were classified based on social status. For example, in some cases, rooted vegetables were not considered suitable for elite consumption because they grew underground. Elites preferred to consume food that came from the trees, elevated from the filth of the common world, thus served as an indicator of class." Now that shows how crazy these white devils think. They didn't want to eat the vegetables that grew in the ground. They didn't want to eat anything that was rooted in the ground. They only wanted to eat anything that was hanging from the tree or hanging from the leaf and didn't touch the ground. But they didn't allow their peasants, these are Spaniards did this to their people, they didn't allow their peasants to eat meat. Or even bread, for that matter. As you heard me read, they were allowed only to eat barley, oats, rye, and vegetable stew. Now, mind you, it shows you how ignorant white people are. And as I used to tell my queen, they so smart, they stupid. The things that they gave the peasants, which is oats, barley, rye, and vegetable stew, is actually healthy. And actually, even though they only wanted to eat the things that hang from the tree, they didn't want to eat anything that touched the ground or that was in the ground. The most nutritious parts of the plant is the roots. So they were actually making their poor populace healthy and made them vegan. And they were eating unhealthy. But my point being is this. You see what they said. They said that the elite mostly consumed, it says generally consumed, meat, wine, and bread. Today, what do they mostly feed poor people? They don't get enough vegetation. You might get a lot of meat, too much meat, or not enough meat. But you definitely don't get enough vegetation, and they let you consume all the bread you want. All them carbohydrates, all that glucose. They let you eat all the bread you want. Now, I want you to know, people, flour is not native to America. Our people wheat is not native to America. Matter of fact, I got that right here. Let me show you. Let me read this right quick. Wheat was brought here by Europeans. Wheat is not native to America. I got an article right here. I'm going to read this right quick. Show you guys that wheat was brought here to the Americas. Matter of fact, specifically, the Spaniards were the ones who introduced wheat. Where's that at right here? got so much information right here written down on my document that I have it all organized, but sometimes I feel like I'm gonna have to give me a second computer screen so I can spread this information out. Here I go, right, let me see. Okay, that's James Adair. Be patient with me, little people, as I go through this information right quick. I got some information that I found showing that they brought wheat to America. Okay, I'm speeding through this right quick. And I might be speeding past it and not even realize I'm doing it because I'm speeding through this information as I try to find this. I should have had this out already. And it just came to my mind. Let me, you know what? As I look for this information, let me play this other audio cast to keep you guys occupied. Again, we must change the way we eat, you people. And we got to realize that we're not Africans. Unless you know you got an African relative in your family, and people going by these DNA tests. Oh wow, I'm so tired of talking about DNA tests. You know, it's ridiculous, and people should know better by now not to be living by these DNA tests. That it's just scams. They can't tell you who your ancestors are. They can tell you the maternal test can tell you who your parents are. They can tell you take your blood and take somebody else's blood and match it up. You know, and and tell you who you're related to, but they can't tell you what tribe you came from. You know, that's all a game, and that's a financial game that they're making a lot of money off of right now. So let me play this right quick, and I'm gonna look for this information, and I shall return.
The largest, most destructive epidemic of addiction in the United States is not caused by drugs and alcohol. It is due to our addiction. It is due to our addiction to unhealthy food. The devastating impact of this national eating disorder is reflected in the spiraling rates of diabetes, obesity, heart disease, cancer, stroke, depression, and other chronic ailments. It is estimated that the number of Americans diagnosed with diabetes increased by over 80% in the last 10 years alone. This avalanche of diabetes and chronic disease has affected people of all races and has been fueled in part by the corruption and homogenization of American eating habits by these giant fast and snack food corporations. We have seen what I call the proliferation of junk foods in strange places that put unhealthy foods within easy reach of everyone, coupled with marketing campaigns that encourage people to continually overindulge on a whim. It used to be that you went to the gas station to get gas. You now go there to get pizza, donuts. The damaging and destructive effects of chronic diseases are amplified in communities of color and among racial and ethnic minorities, where these diseases reach disproportionate levels and cause complications and premature death rates well above the national average. It turns out that an African American male, or actually an African American period, who develops diabetes is over 240 times more likely to end up with a limb amputation than a Caucasian American. We're over 100 times more likely to end up on dialysis due to kidney failure or blind because of retinopathy. These diseases are absolutely destroying our community. And they also have a much greater economic impact because they frequently hit the person who's a primary wage earner. So whereas you have a family that's struggling to get out of poverty and to try and do better, suddenly the primary wage earner becomes disabled due to some chronic disease, and they're not able to work. And so whereas a family that was previously able to make some kind of economic progress now finds all of their resources going into buying medications and paying for doctor visits for the primary wage earner. This is a shame, and it's completely unnecessary. We can do better than this. My question to all of you is, where are you going to go after tonight? Are you going to slide back into the old bad habits that you know are going to destroy your health and your happiness? Are we going to teach these very young children who are relying on us to show them the way all of the destructive, unhealthy habits that we're struggling with right now? Or are we going to continue on this pathway to health and happiness by doing what God has asked us to do? I encourage you, let us listen to God, to medical research, and our inner selves, and return to and embrace the diet that we are designed to eat.
why I interfere. But I found what I wanted to read. I'm going to read this right quick. This is important. Like I said, they brought wheat here. Wheat is not indigenous to America. There's a lot of things that we're eating, a lot of things that we're consuming, a lot of things that we're embracing, a lot of things that we're cooking, a lot of things that we've became accustomed to, and we're not aware that it's not native, is not a part of our indigenous diet. You feel me? As you heard that brother saying, the only thing I don't like about what that brother's talking about, he's trying to say that we need to adopt an African diet. No, we don't. We need to adopt an indigenous diet. And I don't want to call it a Native American diet, no, because I'm not Native American. Anybody born here is native to America. I am indigenous Aborigine, a.k.a. Black Indian. So we need to embrace an indigenous diet. Now, let me read this right quick. And this is coming from, again, this is from Mrs. Susan Steppens, which is the title of her book, which is called Natives of North America. Okay, and I quote, the part of the section that I'm reading is called European Wheat Brought to America. Okay, well, I'll put that title there to remind me the section that I'm reading from in her book. It goes like this, and I quote: If Spaniards and their culture were to survive in these foreign lands, they would need to have readily available sources for the right food. Often, as Spanish officials reported back to the crown on the suitability of newly conquered lands, the lack of Spanish food was mentioned, frustrated with what they knew the world had to offer. Now I'm gonna read a quote from a Spanish official who sent a letter back to Queen Isabella as he complained about the fact that he didn't have Spanish food in the Americas. His name was Tom Lopez Medel. Thomas Lopez Medel, a Spanish official, reported, there was neither wheat nor grapevines nor any proper animals present in the new colonies. Did you hear him? Now, if you talk about, when he says proper animals, he's talking about pigs and cows. Remember, I read to you just earlier where it says that the Spanish elite mostly ate what? Meat, bread, and wine. So he didn't have any wheat to make any bread. Where he was at, obviously, there was no grapes where he was at. And nor was there the type of animals he wanted to eat. You know, of course, he could have fished. There was animals all over America, but there was no animals that he said. You see what he said? He said there was no proper animals. Again, let me quote what he just read. There are neither wheat nor grapevines nor any proper animals present in the new colonies. That's what he wrote. Let me finish reading the paragraph. Hearing this, the Crown commissioned a number of reports that were to elaborate on which European plants grew in the new colonized lands, as well as details as to where they grew best. It was soon determined that the most suitable arrangement would be the colonies to grow their own foods. And it was not long before Spaniards began to rearrange agriculture to meet their own needs, although wheat, wine, and olives only thrived in certain regions of Latin America. The Spaniards considered this a success. Colonists were elated that their own foods were successfully growing in the farmed animals. Excuse me. They were successfully growing in foreign lands, and while crops were important, the Europeans' most significant success was the farmed animals, which thrived in ways they were unparalleled. Again, people, let me read that again. Let me read that one more time. It says the colonists were elated that their own foods were successfully growing in the foreign lands, here in America. And while crops were important, the Europeans' most significant success was with the farmed animals, which thrived in ways they were unparalleled, meaning that the animals over here grew and thrived, and they had no problem breeding animals over here. As a matter of fact, in this article that I was reading, it even pointed out that the animals thrived and grew over here larger than they did in Europe. And as I said, they brought wheat. It says right here, they brought wheat here. Let me read it again. It says, where am I going to start at right here? Let me start this right here. It says, it was soon determined that the most suitable arrangement would be for colonists to grow their own foods. And it was not long before the Spanish began to rearrange. You already said rearrange agriculture to meet their own needs, although wheat, wine, and olives only thrived in certain regions of Latin America. So now that's an excuse for them to come over here and grow stuff over here, because it only grew in certain regions in Latin America, but they grew it over here wherever they wanted to grow it. They grew wheat wherever they wanted to grow wheat at over here. Obviously, the soil over here was better, and the atmosphere, or the getting enough water and things. It was better over here. It's very well known that America's seasons was much better than it was in Europe, and vegetation grew over here much better than it did in Europe. Because I read I think last week as well that 60% of our vegetation fed Europe. 60% of our vegetation fed England and all of the England brothers, including France, Spain, Germany. They all got fed off of us, off of the American landscape and vegetation and animals. So there you go, my people, right there. Wheat is not native to America. They brought it here. Okay. All right. Let me read this right here. Also, this is coming from the same book. The North American Native excuse me. Let me read that. Go back to the title again. The title of this book again by Susan Steppens. Oh, excuse me. This is not by this is by the Food Empowerment Project. My bad. All right. Let me read this right quick. On meat. Again, our people did not eat a whole lot of meat. Our people did not eat pig. Our people did not eat cows. Now, true enough, Plains Indians ate cow. Plains Indians ate the buffalo. They fed off the buffalo. But woodland Indians, which include the Chata, the Cherokee, the Seminole, the Yamasee, the Ojibwa, No, they did not eat. No, they did not eat buffalo. They did not eat pork. And pork, as again, pigs were brought here by Europeans. There was no pigs on the American soil until the white devil came here. There were no cows on the American soil until white devils brought them here. So let me go into and read this article again about food and colonization. And I quote, "The most devastating consequences of this new meat," talking about the pig, this new meat, was that its extraordinary proliferation was accompanied by an equally extraordinary decline in indigenous populations. Did you hear me? Let me read that again. The most devastating consequences of this new meat, talking about pig industry, this new meat industry, was that its extraordinary proliferation was accompanied by the equally extraordinary decline in indigenous populations. Spaniards, anxiously to establish the right food to ensure their own survival, delineated large sections of land for grazing. In other words, they took the land that they wanted, stuck the animals on it to graze as they will. Okay? So let me finish reading it again. Spaniards, anxious to establish their right foods to ensure their own survival, delineated large sections of land for grazing. With no regard for the way the land was being used prior to their arrival, these vast herds often wandered onto indigenous croplands, destroying their primary means of subsistence. The situation became so severe that in a letter to the crown, a Spanish official wrote, "May your lordship realize," this is a quote from the Spanish official to the Queen of Spain. "May your lordship realize that if cattle are allowed, the Indians will be destroyed." Did you hear that? Did you hear that? That's what a Spanish official sent to the Spanish crown in a letter. May your lordship realize that if cattle are allowed, the Indians will be destroyed. And why did he make that statement? Because it just stated that they let all these pigs run wild. In the process of letting all these pigs run wild, it was eating up Indian crops, trampling and destroying their crop fields. And the Spanish did that on purpose. Another way, again, of poisoning our people, because our people didn't eat pigs. Let me read that again. Vast herds often wandered onto indigenous crops, destroying their primary means of substance. The situation became so severe, in a letter the Crown Spanish official wrote, "May your lordship realize that if cattle are allowed, the Indians will be destroyed." Let me continue the second paragraph. Initially, many indigenous people in this region became malnourished, which consequently weakened their resistance to European disease. Others literally starved to death as their agricultural plots were trampled, consumed by animals, or appropriated for the Spanish crops. In time, many indigenous people left with limited options and began to consume European foods. Again, as they control the resources, control the land, they control our people. When they control us, they control us by controlling what we eat, controlling how we eat. I just read to you how they were forcing our people to eat the way they eat by allowing their cattle, their cows, their pigs to infringe on indigenous land. Trample their food, eat their food, contaminate their food with their waste, to the point that our people was malnutrition, had to leave their place of residence, and even succumb to eating the way Europeans did. I just read that. Let me read that one more time. Initially, many indigenous people in the region became malnutritioned, which consequently weakened their resistance to European diseases. Others literally starved to death as their agricultural plots were trampled, consumed by animals, are appropriated for Spanish crops. That means that Spanish took it. In time, many indigenous people left with limited options and began to consume European foods. There you go, people. Again, the white devils trying to find a way to get us to assimilate into their way of living. And that's what they did to our people. I just read that. So, excuse me. On that note, my time is really over. I gotta go, people. I gotta go. My show is only an hour, and if I don't stay on time, I will be off time. But before I go, let me see if anybody got anything you want to say before I go off the air. My point is that we need to change the way we eat, people. We need to stop eating the way Europeans want us to eat. We got to stop looking at them as a model for the way we live our life and the way we eat and the way we, teach our children to eat. We got to go back to the ways of our ancestors. And when I talk about going back to the ways of our ancestors, even back to the ways of our grandmothers and our great-grandmothers, with some exceptions to the rule, meaning that now we know better because our grandparents did not know the health effects of pork. Now, I'm 51 years old. When I was growing up, I cannot recall any health alerts or anything that was given out or shown on television that showed the health effects of eating pork. My grandmother didn't know. But I want you to know, my grandmother to this day she's 85 years old. And she's still feisty. She's still, my grandmother, she's still totally got a clear mind and smart and alert and will hold a conversation and will cuss you out. But why? My grandmother, as she got older, she ate less and less meat. And you know what she ate more and more of? The things that she grew up on, collard greens. Collard greens, mustard greens, turnip greens. Now, she took the pork out of it, too. My grandmother, as Indians were taught to do, listen to your body. My grandmother still eat her collard greens, still eat her cabbage, still eat her cornbread, and will tell you in a minute, don't call me no African American, I'm Cherokee. So, my point being, people, we have to change the way we eat. We got to change the way we think, and we got to change the way we live. And anybody might want to say anything before I get off the air? I see there's a couple people still here in the village chat room, a conference room, Anybody got to say before we head up out of here, before I get up out of here? If anybody ain't got nothing to say, I'm going to end my show today. You feel me? I will be back next delicious Sunday, dropping nothing but the raw and uncut as always, you feel me? And, you know, I love my people. That's why I do what I do. I do what I do because I love my people and I love who I am. I love knowing who I am. I am an indigenous American Aborigine. I'm happy to know that I was born not in another country, but on my own ancestral land, Turtle Island. You feel me, people? So it's time for us to wise up, rise up, and tribe up. You feel me? That's my new motto. It's time for us to wise up, rise up, and tribe up. You feel me? So, on that note, as I always say, may the great mother bring us together under the wings of her peace, her love, her joy. And as always, I know I always say this. I always say I love chicken. And, you know, I mean that. Love, chicken, peace, and chicken grease. I got to go. I'm out. Peace. Much love, people.
Grown food. Grown food. ASC got produce. ASC about to go cool. We gon' grown food. Grown food. ASC got produce. ASC about to go cool. Whipping in the kitchen. Whipping in the kitchen. I be whipping in the kitchen. Whipping in the kitchen. Chop it up, chop it, chop it, chop it, chop it up. The slow food got you sloppy, bruh. So chop it, chop it, chop it, chop it up.
I get the C from the oranges. I get the B from the broccoli. I get the A from the milk. I get my vitamins properly. My food be packed with the minerals. I hope you taking this literal. So when you 65 plus, you should be passing your physical. Try tell them. But they did not believe me. Thought that sugar was sweet. Till I got diabetes. You better rethink your drink. This stuff is not what you think. Get you some water or something. I get it free from the sink. Keep it healthy, but still got that good taste. Got an appetite for flavor and an appetite for change. If you need a couple pointers, I can get you some help. And then I see you on the vibe. Cause you need some milk.
11-year-old with some big dreams, about to make it big on the big screen. Don't pay attention to TV, cause fake food ain't what you need. Come on the house, let us chop it up. Expensive elements made it popular. The youth of the truth ain't no stopping us. The youth of the truth ain't no stopping us. But the health, wealth, social change, my fruits and veggies be off the chain. Want real food for real people, gonna break it bread. Cafe, real money, that's all I need. Get the green, broccoli. Wanna make 100 meals, we done cook 100 meals, cause my people gotta eat.
Grown food. Grown food. ASC got produce. ASC about to go cool. We gon' grown food. Grown food. ASC got produce. ASC about to go cool. Whipping in the kitchen. Whipping in the kitchen. I be whipping in the kitchen. Whipping in the kitchen. Chop it up. Chop it, chop it, chop it, chop it up. The slow food got you sloppy, bruh. So chop it, chop it, chop it, chop it up. Grown food. Grown food. Chop it up. Chop it, chop it, chop it, chop it up. The slow food got you sloppy, bruh. So chop it, chop it, chop it, chop it up.